The grand hall of the Galactic Council buzzed with whispers and quiet laughter. Hundreds of alien representatives sat in the curved rows that rose like stairs toward the ceiling. Light from 3 suns streamed through the crystal dome above, casting rainbow patterns across the polished floor. In the middle row, James Miller shifted uncomfortably in his seat. As Earth's ambassador, he was used to being the odd one out, the only human among the varied alien species. Today, though, something felt different. Too many eyes were turning his way, too many hidden smiles behind fancy hands and tentacles. Order, order in the council. The head speaker's voice boomed through the chamber. His tall, blue-skinned form towered over the central platform. We are gathered here to address the final will and testament of King Aldor, late ruler of the Stellar Empire. James sat up straighter. The death of King Aldor had been sudden, shocking the galaxy. The king had ruled for over 200 years, building the largest empire in known space. Everyone expected Prince Ray, the king's eldest son, to inherit everything. As tradition demands, the head speaker continued, the royal inheritance must be announced before the full council. He lifted a glowing crystal tablet. The crown and empire shall pass to Prince Ray. As expected, quiet nods filled the chamber. James noticed several aristocrats from the Stellar Empire looking pleased with themselves. However, the head speaker paused, and James saw the alien's mouth twitch. There is an unusual addition to the will. The whispers grew louder. James caught fragments of conversations in different languages, all of them sounding amused or shocked. Regarding the guardianship of Princess Rose, the king's youngest child, the head speaker cleared his throat. King Aldor has appointed Earth's ambassador, James Miller, as her legal guardian. The chamber erupted in laughter. James froze in his seat, sure he had heard wrong. But the head speaker held up a hand for silence and continued. The human ambassador shall take full responsibility for the princess's care, education, and well-being until she reaches the age of maturity in 50 standard years. More laughter echoed through the chamber. A tall aristocrat from the Stellar Empire stood up, his silver robes glittering. Surely this is a joke. Giving the defective princess to a human. This must be a mistake. The will is properly sealed and verified. The head speaker replied. It is legally binding. James finally found his voice. I don't understand. What do you mean by defective? A female aristocrat turned to him, her expression a mix of pity and amusement. Oh, you don't know. Princess Rose was born with a genetic flaw. She's emotionally unstable, feels things too deeply, can't control herself properly, completely unsuitable for royal duties. The king must have thought it fitting to give such a broken child to. She waved her hand at James. Well, to your kind. James felt heat rise in his face, but years of diplomatic training kept his expression neutral. I see. And where is the princess now? She will be delivered to Earth's diplomatic compound within 3 standard days, the head speaker answered. Do you accept this guardianship, Ambassador Miller? James looked around the chamber. Hundreds of faces stared back at him, most of them expecting him to refuse. He saw mockery in their eyes, the same look he'd seen so many times when humans first joined the Galactic Council. The look that said humans were too young, too emotional, too primitive to understand galactic politics. He stood up, straightening his simple black suit. I accept. The laughter started again, but James kept his head high. I accept full guardianship of Princess Rose, with all rights and responsibilities that come with it. The human accepts. Someone called out. How fitting. The unwanted taking in the unwanted. But James didn't sit down. He looked directly at the head speaker. I only have one question. Did anyone ask Princess Rose what she wants? The chamber fell silent for the first time since the announcement. The head speaker blinked all 4 of his eyes. The princess's wishes are irrelevant. The king's will is law. James nodded slowly. Then I look forward to meeting my ward. He sat down, ignoring the renewed whispers and chuckles around him. Let them laugh, he thought. They always laughed at humans. But somehow, he had a feeling they wouldn't be laughing for long. 3 days after the council meeting, James stood in Earth's diplomatic compound, watching a royal shuttle descend from the morning sky. The sleek silver ship landed softly on the pad, its engines humming quietly before shutting down. He tugged at his collar, wondering what to expect. The compound staff stood behind him, equally nervous about welcoming their unusual guest. They had prepared the best guest suite, though none of them knew exactly what a princess from the Stellar Empire would need. The ship's door opened with a soft hiss. 2 tall royal guards stepped out first, their armor gleaming. Then, a small figure appeared in the doorway. Princess Rose was nothing like James had imagined. She was shorter than the average Imperial, barely taller than a human teenager. Her skin was pale blue like all Imperials, but her eyes, all 4 of them, were a striking silver instead of the usual gold. She wore a simple white dress, carrying only a small bag. "Welcome to Earth, Your Highness," James said, bowing slightly. "I'm Ambassador James Miller." Rose stepped down from the ship carefully. When she looked up at him, James felt something strange, a gentle touch in his mind, like a soft breeze carrying feelings of uncertainty and hope. "Thank you for accepting me, Ambassador," she said quietly. Her voice was musical, with an odd echo that seemed to carry her emotions. "I know you had no choice in the matter." "Everyone has a choice, Your Highness," James replied. "I chose to accept, and I'm glad I did." One of the guards stepped forward, holding out a data crystal. "The princess's medical records and care instructions," he said stiffly. "She requires daily medication to suppress her condition." James took the crystal but noticed Rose flinch at the word condition. The guard continued, "She must not be allowed to." "Thank you," James cut him off firmly. "I can handle things from here." The guards looked relieved to leave. Within minutes, the shuttle took off, leaving Rose standing alone with her small bag, looking lost in the massive landing pad. "Would you like to see your rooms?" James asked gently. As they walked through the compound, James noticed how Rose's presence affected others. The staff members they passed suddenly touched their heads, looking confused. Some smiled without reason. Others looked sad. In her suite, Rose finally spoke again. "You feel it too, don't you? What I do to people?" James nodded. "You're empathic. You can sense emotions and maybe share them." "It's more than that," Rose said, sitting down heavily on a couch. "I don't just sense them. I connect with them. Father said it made me dangerous, that a ruler must be cold and logical." Her silver eyes filled with tears. "The medication helps block it, but it hurts you," James finished, understanding now. "It blocks part of who you are." Rose looked up in surprise. You're not afraid. Everyone else is always afraid." James sat down across from her. "On Earth, we have a saying, different isn't defective. Your ability isn't a flaw, Princess. It's part of you." "Just Rose, please," she said quickly. "I'm not really a princess anymore." "Okay, Rose." James smiled. "And I'm just James. Would you like to try something?" She nodded cautiously. "Don't take your medication today. Let's see what happens when you're just yourself." Rose's eyes widened. "But the guards said." "The guards aren't here," James said gently. "This is your home now, and you get to make choices about your own body." For the first time, Rose smiled. The feeling that brushed James's mind was like sunshine breaking through clouds, pure joy and relief, touching everyone in the compound. In the hallway, he heard someone start laughing for no reason. "I've never," Rose wiped her eyes. "No one has ever let me choose before." James stood up. "Well, that's going to change. Are you hungry?" "The staff made about 5 different breakfasts because we weren't sure what you'd like." Rose stood too, still smiling. "I'd like to try them all, if that's okay." "Of course it is," James said. "After all, this is your home now. Your choices, your rules." As they walked to the dining room, James felt another brush of emotion. Gratitude, mixed with something like hope. Maybe the council thought giving him Rose was a joke or a burden. But watching the young princess walk with her head held high for the first time, James knew they had given him something much more important. A chance to show the galaxy what humanity did best, accepting people exactly as they were. 2 weeks had passed since Rose's arrival, and the Earth compound had changed. Staff members smiled more often. Arguments resolved themselves before they could start. Even the usually grumpy security chief was caught humming in the hallways. James watched Rose grow stronger each day without her medication. Her silver eyes became brighter, and she walked with more confidence. But today would be her first real test. A minor diplomatic meeting with 3 alien species arguing over trading rights. "Are you sure about this?" Rose asked, adjusting her Earth-style suit. She had refused to wear her royal clothes, preferring the simpler human fashion. "I trust you," James replied. "Just observe from the side room. If it gets too overwhelming, you can leave anytime." The meeting started badly. The tree-like arbor representatives' branches were shaking with anger, while the crystal-bodied Luminan diplomat glowed an angry red. The slug-like Merc ambassador had turned an unpleasant shade of green. "Your ships damaged our sacred forests," the arbor shouted. "Your trees grew into our flight paths," the Luminan shot back. "Both of you are blocking our trade routes," the Merc gurgled. James noticed Rose watching through the one-way window. Her eyes were closed, but he could feel waves of something washing through the room. Understanding, calm, and clarity. Suddenly, the arbor representative paused mid-shout. "Oh, I hadn't considered how your ship's light helps our seedlings grow." The Luminan's glow softened to pink, and we never realized those branches make perfect natural docking stations. "The shade from both your species would protect our transports from solar radiation," the Merc added thoughtfully. James hid his smile as the 3 representatives began drawing up plans for a joint space station, one that would benefit all their species. In 30 minutes, they had solved a dispute that had lasted 3 years. After they left, Rose stumbled out of the side room, looking tired but happy. "That was amazing," James said. "How did you do it?" "I just helped them feel what the others were feeling," Rose explained, sitting down. "When you understand someone's emotions, it's harder to stay angry at them." "You know what this means, right?" James grinned. "You're not defective. You're probably the best diplomat in the galaxy." Rose blushed, her pale blue skin turning slightly purple. "The council would never accept that. They think emotions make you weak." "Then they're missing out on something powerful," James replied. But before he could say more, his computer chimed with an urgent message. The screen showed a news report from the Stellar Empire. Prince Ray, Rose's brother, was making an announcement. "We are concerned about our beloved sister," the prince said smoothly. "We have reports she is not taking her prescribed medication. For her own safety and the safety of others, we insist she return home immediately." Rose's hands trembled. "They're afraid. They can feel me getting stronger, even from here." James turned off the screen. "You don't have to go back. Earth has granted you diplomatic protection." "But why?" Rose's voice shook. "Why did Father give me to you? Why did he wait until after his death?" James thought carefully. "Maybe he knew something about your abilities that others didn't. Maybe he wanted you safe, away from the Empire's politics." A warning light flashed on James's desk. Someone was trying to scan their building from orbit. Rose's eyes widened. "They're watching us." "Let them watch," James said firmly. "You've done nothing wrong. In fact," he smiled as a new idea formed. "How would you like to help with more diplomatic meetings?" "But the council will have to accept results," James finished. "If you can help solve problems that have stumped them for years, they'll have to recognize your talent." Rose stood straighter, a determined look in her silver eyes. "They always said I was too emotional, too connected to others. But maybe that's exactly what the galaxy needs." James nodded proudly. His ward wasn't just surviving. She was beginning to shine. Let the Empire watch. Let the Council laugh. Soon, they would all see what he already knew. Rose wasn't broken. She was extraordinary. And maybe, just maybe, she would change the galaxy's view of both emotions and humans, one diplomatic meeting at a time. The attack came without warning. Rose was walking in the compound's garden when the security alarm screamed to life. A shadow dropped from above. An assassin in stealth armor, weapon raised. But Rose had felt the killer's presence before they moved. Waves of cold hatred and determination had given them away. She dove aside as the weapon fired, rolling behind a fountain. Rose, James's voice carried across the garden. He was running toward her, guards close behind him. The assassin turned to fire again, but stumbled, clutching their head. Rose was projecting every feeling of pain and fear she'd ever experienced directly into their mind. The weapon clattered to the ground. Security surrounded the fallen assassin, who turned out to be from a professional guild. But what worried James most was the royal seal they found among the assassin's belongings. Later that evening, in James's secure office, Rose paced while he examined documents recovered from the assassin's equipment. "Look at this," James said, pointing to his screen. "Records of genetic engineering experiments, going back 3 generations in your family." Rose leaned closer. "These are medical files. About me. Not just you." James scrolled through the data. "Your father, your grandmother, all of them had their genes modified. They were trying to create something. A perfect ruler," Rose whispered. "Father used to talk about it. Someone who could understand and control their subjects completely." She hugged herself. "But I came out wrong." "No," James said firmly. "You came out human." A soft chime interrupted them. Priority message from the Galactic Council. The head speaker's blue face filled the screen. "Ambassador Miller," he said gravely, "we have received a formal request from the Stellar Empire for Princess Rose's immediate return. They cite medical concerns." "You mean they're worried I'm not being drugged anymore?" Rose interrupted, stepping into view. The head speaker blinked all 4 eyes. "Your Highness, you look different." "I look alive," Rose corrected. "For the first time in my life, I can actually feel without shame. And I can feel something else too." Her silver eyes narrowed. "Fear. From my brother. From the Council. Why are you all so afraid of someone who just wants to help?" The head speaker shifted uncomfortably. "There are rumors, diplomatic meetings where impossible agreements were reached, trade deals that shouldn't have worked. Some say you're manipulating people's minds." "I help them understand each other," Rose said. "Isn't that what diplomacy is supposed to do?" Before the head speaker could respond, another alarm blared. James checked his security feed and saw a royal shuttle landing. Out stepped Lord Grey, Rose's former tutor. "He's here to rescue me," Rose said, feeling the familiar presence. "But he's worried. Scared. There's something he doesn't want us to know." James stood. "Then let's find out what it is." He turned to the head speaker's image. "Council records show Lord Grey was in charge of the Royal Genetic Program. Maybe you should send observers. This could be educational." The head speaker nodded slowly and ended the transmission. In the meeting room, Lord Grey stood stiffly, his gray robes perfect as always, but when he saw Rose, his composure cracked. "My dear princess," he said smoothly, "we've been so worried. Your medication was designed to suppress her abilities." James interrupted. "Abilities your program created deliberately." Lord Grey's face hardened. "You don't understand. We needed a way to ensure loyalty, to prevent rebellion. The perfect ruler would understand their subjects so completely that they could prevent any conflict before it began. By controlling them, Rose asked quietly. By guiding them. Lord Grey insisted. But your abilities were too strong, too pure. You couldn't be controlled. Because she has something you didn't plan for, James said. Empathy without the desire to control. Understanding without manipulation. Rose stepped forward, and Lord Grey stepped back. "You're right to be afraid," she said softly, "but not of what I can do to you. You're afraid because I can show everyone what you did to me, to my father, to our whole family." Through the windows, more council ships were landing. Lord Grey saw them too, and Rose felt his fear spike. The truth was coming out, but Rose wasn't afraid anymore. She had something the Empire had never given her, a real family, even if it was just one human who saw her true worth. And together, they were about to change everything. The Galactic Council chamber was packed, not just with the usual delegates, but with journalists and observers from 100 worlds. Everyone wanted to see the confrontation between Lord Grey and his former student. Rose sat beside James, wearing an Earth diplomatic uniform. She had insisted on it, saying, "If I'm going to defend myself, I want to do it as who I am now, not who I was." Lord Grey stood at the center platform, finishing his speech. "And so you see, the princess is a danger to galactic stability. Her powers, unchecked by proper medication, could influence entire worlds." The chamber buzzed with worried whispers, but James noticed something interesting. The delegates closest to Rose weren't afraid. They could feel what James had learned over the past months. Rose's presence brought clarity, not control. "Ambassador Miller," the head speaker called. "You have been the princess's guardian. What do you say to these accusations?" James stood. "I say we've been looking at this all wrong. Rose isn't a threat. She's a gift, and I can prove it." He pressed a button, and holographic screens appeared around the chamber. These are records of every diplomatic meeting Rose has attended. The screens showed meetings, trade negotiations, and peace talks. In each one, angry aliens became calm, enemies found common ground, and impossible problems found solutions. "Notice something?" James asked. "Every agreement made under Rose's influence has lasted. No one broke their word. No one claimed they were manipulated. Because they weren't. Rose doesn't control minds. She helps people understand each other. That's even more dangerous." Lord Grey protested. "The royal family's power comes from managing conflicts, from being needed to keep the peace. If everyone suddenly starts understanding each other." He stopped, realizing what he'd admitted. The chamber erupted in shocked conversations. Rose stood. When she spoke, her voice carried to every corner of the chamber without a microphone. "My father knew. That's why he sent me to Earth. He knew humans would see my abilities as a gift, not a weapon." She turned to face the council. "I've learned something from humans. They feel everything so strongly: love, hate, fear, joy. But they don't run from their emotions. They learn from them. They grow through them." James watched proudly as Rose walked to the center platform. The delegates she passed straightened in their seats, not from control but from the simple clarity of her presence. "I propose something new," Rose continued. "Not suppression, not control, but understanding. Let me help build bridges between species. Let me teach others how to feel what their neighbors feel, to truly understand different perspectives." "Impossible," Lord Grey shouted. "The Empire will never." "The Empire doesn't have a choice." A new voice rang out. Prince Ray appeared on the main screen, looking tired but determined. "Our father left one more message. If Rose proves herself capable of using her abilities for peace, she is to be named Imperial Ambassador to the Galactic Council." Lord Grey's face turned pale. "My prince, the genetic program will be discontinued," Ray finished. "We've lived in fear of emotions long enough. Perhaps it's time we learned from Earth's example." The chamber was silent for a moment. Then one delegate started clapping. Others joined in. Soon the entire council was applauding. James caught Rose's eye and smiled. She sent him a feeling of pure joy, and for the first time, she didn't try to hold it back. The entire chamber felt it, a wave of happiness and hope that brought tears to many eyes. The head speaker raised his hands for silence. It seems we have much to learn from both the princess and from Earth. Ambassador Miller, your species has shown us once again that what we consider weakness can become the greatest strength. As the council moved to formally recognize Rose's new position, James remembered the laughter when he first accepted guardianship of the defective princess. Now, watching Rose stand tall before the galaxy's leaders, he knew the last laugh had been worth waiting for. Sometimes, he thought, the best way to change the galaxy was simply to show it a better way, the human way, of accepting people for who they truly were. News of Rose's appointment as Imperial Ambassador spread through the galaxy like wildfire, but not everyone was happy about the changes. One morning, alarms blared through Earth's diplomatic compound once again. Multiple ships dropping out of hyperspace, the security chief reported. Imperial signatures, but not from Prince Ray's fleet. James rushed to the command center, finding Rose already there. Her silver eyes were focused on the tactical display. "It's Admiral Stone," she said, feeling the familiar presence. "Father's old military commander. And he's not alone." The display showed 15 warships, their weapons charged. A transmission came through, showing a stern-faced Imperial officer. "This is Admiral Stone of the True Empire Fleet," he announced. "The genetic program cannot be exposed. Our enemies would use this knowledge against us. Surrender the princess and all related documents, or we will take them by force." James stepped forward. "Admiral, you're threatening a protected Earth facility. This is an act of war. A small price to pay for Imperial security," Stone replied coldly. "You have 10 minutes to comply." But Rose felt something the Admiral didn't expect. Fear from his own crews. Many of them had families who had gone through the genetic program. They wanted the truth too. "Let me talk to them," Rose said to James. "Not just the Admiral. All of them." James nodded. "Do it." Rose closed her eyes and reached out. Not with words, but with feelings. She shared her own experiences, the pain of suppression, the joy of freedom, the peace of acceptance. She showed them memories of diplomatic meetings where understanding replaced hatred, where cooperation grew from compassion. On the tactical display, something unexpected happened. 2 ships powered down their weapons. Then 3 more. Crew members were refusing orders. Admiral Stone's face turned purple with rage. "What are you doing to my people?" "Nothing," Rose replied calmly. "I'm just helping them feel the truth. Every family affected by the program, every child given drugs to suppress their gifts, every potential lost because the Empire feared its own people's hearts. This is why emotions must be controlled." Stone shouted. "Look at my fleet falling apart." "No," James stepped in. "Look at your people choosing a better way. This is why Earth welcomed Rose. We understand that feelings aren't weakness. They're what make us strong." More ships powered down. Stone's flagship stood nearly alone now. Suddenly, new ships appeared. Prince Ray's fleet, led by the Imperial flagship. "Admiral Stone," Ray's voice carried authority. "You are relieved of command. The age of suppression is over." Stone reached for controls, possibly to fire weapons, but his own bridge crew stopped him. They had felt what Rose shared, the possibility of a better future. As Imperial security forces boarded Stone's ship, Rose turned to James. "I felt something else from the crews. Many of their children. They're like me. Different levels of empathic ability, all suppressed." James smiled. "Then they'll need teachers who understand what they're going through." The next day, the Galactic Council held an emergency session. Rose stood before them, not as a princess or even just an ambassador, but as someone who had changed the galaxy's understanding of emotional power. "The Empire hereby announces the establishment of the Empathic Academy," Prince Ray declared, "under the joint supervision of Earth and the Imperial throne. Ambassador Rose will oversee the training of all empathically gifted individuals. And these trained empaths," the head speaker asked, "what will be their role?" "They will serve where they choose," Rose answered. As diplomats, counselors, teachers, or simply as themselves. No more suppression. No more control. We will show the galaxy what emotions and understanding can truly achieve. James watched from his seat, feeling pride wash through him. The scared young princess he'd taken in was now standing tall, ready to help others like her. Even the council members who once laughed at humans' emotional nature were nodding in approval. Stone's failed attack had proved what Earth had always known. True strength came not from controlling emotions, but from understanding them. And now, thanks to one human's acceptance and one princess's courage, the entire galaxy was about to learn that lesson. The storm had come, but it hadn't brought destruction. Instead, it had cleared the air for something new to grow. 5 years had passed since the day Rose first arrived at Earth's diplomatic compound. The Galactic Council chamber looked very different now. Where there had once been rigid separation between species, delegates now sat mixed together, talking freely. James sat in Earth's section, watching Rose conduct her final session as ambassador before taking her new role. She stood at the central platform, her silver eyes bright, no longer the scared princess who had arrived with just a small bag and hidden gifts. The Empathic Academy's first-class graduates tomorrow, Rose announced. 300 students from 42 species. She paused, letting the delegates feel her pride. And yes, some of them are human. That caused a stir. Humans with empathic abilities. But Rose just smiled. We discovered that many humans have natural empathic talents. Small gifts, but real. They simply needed training to understand them. Just like my own people needed to learn that feeling deeply isn't a weakness. The head speaker, now one of Rose's strongest supporters, stood. The Academy's success is undeniable. Planetary conflicts have decreased by 60%. Trade disputes are resolved in days instead of years. And the number of species requesting to join the council has doubled. James remembered how they used to laugh at humans for being too emotional, too quick to connect with others. Now those same qualities were being studied and celebrated. A young Imperial student stepped forward, one of Rose's first pupils. She activated a holo display, showing the old recordings from the day Rose was given to James. The chamber watched their past selves laughing at the unwanted princess being handed to the primitive humans. But no one was laughing now. Rose walked down from the platform to stand beside James. 5 years ago, I thought being given to Earth was a punishment. I was wrong. She turned to face the council. It was the first time anyone saw my difference as a gift, not a flaw. Humans taught me something the Empire had forgotten, that understanding others starts with accepting yourself. The chamber erupted in applause. Even species that had once opposed emotional diplomacy were now its strongest supporters. Prince Ray's image appeared on the main screen. Sister, the Empire formally requests that you return. Not as a ward, but as the new head of the Imperial Diplomatic Corps and Chancellor of the Academy. Rose felt James's sudden sadness and turned to him with a smile. Only if my human father agrees to come with me as chief advisor. James blinked in surprise. Your father? You've been my true father since the day you let me choose to be myself, Rose said softly. I feel it. You feel it. And now everyone can feel it too. The head speaker laughed, not mockingly, but with genuine joy. A human advising the Imperial Diplomatic Corps. 5 years ago, we would have called it a joke. Now we call it progress. Later, in Rose's old garden at the Earth compound, she and James watched the sun set. A group of Academy students practiced nearby, learning to project and share positive emotions. Remember how they laughed? Rose asked, watching the students, when you accepted guardianship of the defective princess. James nodded. Best decision I ever made. No, Rose corrected him. Best decision we ever made. I chose to trust you too, remember? They both turned as a student successfully projected a wave of pure happiness, making flowers bloom early and bringing smiles to everyone's faces. The galaxy's changing. James said, because one princess learned to be herself, and one species wasn't afraid to feel. Rose took his hand. They're not laughing anymore. No, James agreed. They're feeling instead. And that's so much better. As they walked back inside, past students of all species learning to understand each other in ways once thought impossible, James thought about how far they'd come. The unwanted princess was now the most respected diplomat in the galaxy. The mocked humans were now teachers of emotional wisdom. And the last laugh. It wasn't really a laugh at all. It was something better. The feeling of joy shared between a human father and his alien daughter, spreading out to touch the hearts of an entire galaxy. Sometimes, James thought, the best revenge against mockery wasn't proving others wrong. It was showing them a better way to be right.